Okay, welcome everyone to Warrior Women in Business, episode 68. I'm super excited about today's guest. I've never had someone quite like Chandra Marshall on, and so it's going to be an incredible episode. I'm really excited. So for those of you that don't know me and don't know anything about Warrior Women in Business, I thought I'd give a little bit of background about what I do at Warrior Women in Business and what Warrior Women in Business does to support female leaders, female entrepreneurs, and women in the arts. So my name is Jasmine Sandler. I've been in branding and digital marketing for a very long time. And I saw this need around 2016 when I was keynoting a conference for female executives for female leaders to support each other, to drive real impact, and also to bridge the gap to provide knowledge and connectivity to female entrepreneurs. And as a musician, I have a huge passion for women in the arts. So we also do quite a bit as a women's media company to support female artists. That being said, a couple of things that I wanted to mention before we get into the episode. I just came back from Los Angeles, where Women in Business was a partner of the Women's Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, which was probably the coolest experience I've ever had. And we got to play on stage with Lita Ford, Nancy Wilson from Heart. It just, in the camaraderie and the strength of the women in the music business industry and the women, the female musicians in the room was just unbelievable. So if you missed it and you are a musician, I would encourage you to check it out for next year. That's the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp. The other piece of news before we get into today's guest is Warrior Women in Business is a subset of my main digital marketing and branding agency, JS Media. And we have an office in Beverly Hills, which is fairly recent. To that end, we partnered with a women's collective there, and I was able to attend their event, their holiday gala. And I tell you, when this woman, her name is Roxy Starr, who's going to be on the podcast live in January, really brings women in business together. She's just doing an amazing job. So I like to give shout outs to women that are doing great things for other women. And then one more thing I wanted to mention. As you'll notice, there's a woman in the military behind me on my screen. That is our Warrior Women in Military, which we designed. We have a whole t-shirt fashion line, but we designed that specifically for episode 58, where I had the pleasure of interviewing Phyllis Wilson, who is the president of the Women's Military Memorial in Arlington, Virginia. And if you haven't been there and you haven't visited, I think for any woman that really cares about other women and wants to understand what women have gone through in the US military, it is a must see and must attend visit. So, with all of that said, thank you, Chandra, for taking the time out to be on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about women in leadership.
Yes, absolutely, me too. So just a quick bio on Chandra for you, for those of you that aren't familiar with her. So she is the vice president of multi-domain combat solutions for Lockheed Martin. She's going to talk about that today. I'm really excited. And and a general manager of the Rotary and Mission Systems line of business for Lockheed Martin in Morristown, New York. And I'm in New York, so hello, New Yorkers. In this position, Ms. Marshall is responsible for the planning and execution of several integrated warfare systems and sensors, abbreviated as IWSS, programs within domestic and international customers. So you can imagine she has a lot of responsibility. She's also a mom, which is equally important for any warrior women. Okay, so getting into this, your bio and your work honestly is like so warrior woman. It really, really is. And we really haven't had a female leader in the defense category on the podcast. It shoulders responsibilities that I think, as I built up Warrior Women in Business, is it what I think other warrior women in business want to do, which is have real societal impact, not just in their own little businesses. So we're excited to learn more. And every guest has a different path, you know. So can you share, a little bit about a few things? So first of all, where you came from, your path, how you got here, a little bit about what you do today, and a little bit about Lockheed Martin as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to school originally to be a lawyer. I have a degree in political science and a master's in public administration. all intentions to be a lawyer. My mom is a legal secretary, so I worked as for an internship at her firm, and I quickly decided I did not want to be a lawyer anymore. So as I was kind of thinking out my career and trying to figure out what I was going to do, there was some opportunities that presented itself at Lockheed Martin. At the time, this is back in about 2000, Lockheed Martin was growing internationally so much, and there were opportunities in the export control organization, basically, working with the government to get licenses to be able to sell our products to international customers.
Oh,
So
okay.
that kind of fit nicely into, the political science legal background that I was going for. And that was my segue into Lockheed Martin. And you asked kind of why Lockheed Martin in the background. So for me, defense is super exciting to me. I consider it my small way of giving back. I have family members in every branch of service in the military. So for me, the mission that we have, serving the customers, making sure that men and women come home safely to their families, that's a deep connection for me. And one of the reasons why I've been with Lockheed for going on 24 years now from a career perspective.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's incredible. And there's so much to explore here, especially in the aerospace and defense category that's growing as the number one economic sector in the United States. So
Mhm.
that's really interesting. So let's talk about a little bit about the challenges and accomplishments in the field. I mean, obviously, I'm interested in understanding what it's like to be a woman in
Yep.
this category. I mean, I'm ex-IBM, so I know what it's like to work within a male-dominated engineering space. But can you talk about that from perspective of Lockheed Martin and defense?
Yeah, I will say that Lockheed Martin has come a long way since 2001 when I started. I vividly remember always being the only female in the room.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And as I continue to move up the ranks at Lockheed Martin, you start to see a space where you see more females. And then as you grow in leadership positions, it kind of goes back to a smaller population of females. And, it goes back to a male dominated environment. So as you can imagine, there's lots of challenges with that of being the only female at the table. So I'll say very early on, I had some experiences from being in such a male dominated field. I think my first year at Lockheed Martin, I was actually told to shut up in a meeting,
Whoa.
which is crazy, right?
And
Like,
how did you respond? How did you respond? That's my
you know,
question.
I'm a Jersey girl, right? So
Yeah.
I quickly, I didn't say anything in the meeting. I kind of got my composure, but immediately after the meeting, I went into the gentleman's office and closed the door and
Good.
really set the stage early on that that you can talk to anybody else you want that way, but you're not going to talk to me that way.
I love it.
So that was like one of my first experiences, when I started here. And, you know, what I learned along the way is that, women are looked at very differently than men, right? So you need to be intentional when you speak up in meetings. Make it count. What I always tell people is that, men can go in a meeting, they can ramble on, and everyone's hanging on their every word, listening. If a woman does that, you can quickly be tuned out, and
So
what you
true.
what you want to bring to the table gets lost. So I always tell people be intentional when you want to contribute to make sure that your voice is heard and that people understand your contributions and it's valued versus being kind of just noise. What I always experience too, I'm a very aggressive individual, and as a female
You
that's
wouldn't be on this podcast, I'll tell you that
right,
much.
but
So,
that's considered, it's very stereotypical.
yeah.
People will say that makes you, I don't know if I can curse on here, but a
Oh,
bitch.
yeah, I understand the B word. You can say the B
Right.
word.
So
Right.
whereas a man behave the same way and they get commended for their actions, right? So what
Mhm.
I always say is sometimes as females move up, they tend to kind of lose themselves because they don't want to be viewed in a negative manner. But I always encourage people, be true to yourself, continue to be assertive, and at times, sometimes you may need to be aggressive, but show that you know what you're doing, you mean business, and that you command the attention that you deserve. So kind of little things that I've learned along the way, but it's hard every single day
Yeah.
in this field. But you continue to be cognizant of it and make sure that you're focused on the right things. And talent will prevail in the end, is was what I always tell people.
I love it. No, I love that you said about being intentional and also just giving an example
Yeah,
because a lot of people say be intentional, but they don't really talk about it. I think the key is, well, I love what you said because women, and I'm a singer, so I'm always listening to people's voice. I'm listening to voices. Do
right.
you know what I mean? So women have a different pitch, and I think that's part of the battle a lot of times. So like I love what you said that women can talk and talk and it'll just go like this. Yeah. So
Yeah.
being intentional, having a plan, right?
Yeah.
And
And when you go to speak, make sure that it's meaningful what you're saying,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
I think as females, we have to be particularly sensitive to that. Make it meaningful and people will listen. Don't just talk to have your voice heard or just to talk. It's not
yeah. No, I
effective.
love it. I know I love that's really great advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, history for
Yeah.
those that aren't familiar and are interested in getting into this type of industry.
So I'll separate it out into two areas where, I'll say what success means to me. From a
Okay.
career perspective, honestly, it means to be successful, listening to our customers and delivering capability when
Hmm.
it. In this field, you don't stay in this field unless you're connected to the mission to make sure that people come home safely.
Yeah.
Um, so delivering for our customer what they need and when they need it. To me, if you can do that, you're successful in this business. And as you can imagine, there's lots of people, to drive to make that happen. So you
Yeah.
have to be a leader to do that. But that's what success means to me. I'll kind of pivot and say from a leadership perspective, for me, what success means is that, when I see someone that I've mentored and championed, and they are promoted and they're successful, that is so meaningful to me from a career
Yeah.
perspective. I take a lot of pride in that. And I have been fortunate enough as I've gone along in my career to have two very influential female mentors along with me in my career. And I always like to share the two pieces of advice from these female mentors that really, I think, kind of set the course for me as I continue to grow in my career. One of them is don't opt yourself out of jobs. And
Mm.
when I say that, what I mean is that, a job requisition could be posted and a man could look at it and maybe he has, satisfies one of five of the things on the job description. He's going to apply for the job. A woman
Yeah,
will look at
right, of
that same
course.
requisition and she'll convince herself, oh, well, I don't meet all five.
That's
So
so
probably shouldn't apply.
I have so many women that I talk to that say that.
Yeah.
Sorry to
So,
interrupt you, but that's just so funny.
and a woman will look at it too and it's like, oh, they'll convince themselves about why they maybe can't juggle family life and professional life.
Yeah.
So when I say, look at a requisition, don't opt yourself out, go for it. Let someone else tell you that you're not qualified or you're not the best person for the job. And that's been very key advice for me as I've gone along. I'll say the other piece of advice that I was given is, be honest about your limitations. And when I say that, for me, I have a family support network around me here in New Jersey. So that for me meant that for me to do what I do in business, I need that support network. So I can't
Yes.
relocate my family. And that's a key thing, right? Because there's constant demands, across, you can imagine across the United States from
I
a lot
could
of,
imagine your job. Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
so you have to understand your limitations, be vocal about it, upfront about it, and stick to it. Because your mental and personal health is just as important as the contributions that you make for the business and whatever company that you work for.
Yeah. I mean, it's impossible to be a leader if you're not taking care of yourself,
Exactly.
right? No, I
Yep.
love that you bring that up because it's too easy to be in a position where you go, 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 as I can imagine that you're in, with shouldering a lot of responsibilities and then saying, hey, wait a minute, I have to take care of myself.
Yep.
And I like that you're steadfast about your family. I think, that's really important is setting priorities. So,
The most important thing for me.
well, good. I mean, it should be,
Yep.
right? It's you're happy. So it's the most important thing.
Yep.
Okay. So, all right, let me move on. So, let's talk about mentoring because I totally agree with what you said. A few years ago, I teach a lot, and I taught at this small college, some class, And I was getting on the subway like a month later, and some girl came running up to me and gave me a hug. And she said, "Your book changed my life." You know what
It's-
I'm saying? So this
yeah,
is what it's like mentoring, right? So let's talk about how you mentor. Are you involved in mentoring
yeah,
at the company or outside of the company? Let's talk
yeah.
about what you do in mentoring.
So both. I always take every opportunity I can to mentor,
Yeah,
anybody, right, regardless, female, male. That's an important part of my job. And
good.
one of the other things we always have what's called business resource groups. They're diversity and
Hey,
inclusion groups.
yeah.
I was recently asked to speak at a women's network conference. So,
Okay.
and that conference was just about women in leadership, kind of the similar to this topic. And
Mhm.
it's such a great forum for engagement, for questions for people to ask. And part of what I brought to that forum was the fact that I am a female leader and I'm also a mother. So we talked about things like, I gave advice that, as a mother, we are harder on ourselves than anybody ever could be, right? So, and
Yeah.
you have to give yourself a break and, don't feel bad about taking time for yourself or just doing things that you
Right.
enjoy as an individual. Because,
Mhm.
as females, moms, we just always feel guilty, right? I always say too, my number one piece of advice for leaders in the organization that are females is find that PTA mom. And I guess that could apply to a male too, right? If
Oh,
you're so busy, you need
listen,
that
more now than ever. I
friend.
think.
You need that friend to go to that knows everything that's going on at your kid's school so that you don't, miss something or, you can catch up and, make sure you're there and present for your son. So I always, those are kind of in the last forum I did, those were kind of two key pieces of advice that I gave in there. The other thing that I did a few years ago is I started what was called for the business resource groups that we have
Mhm.
at Lockheed Martin. I started an executive mentoring program, and
Okay,
folks that were in those groups, they could apply to be part of that mentoring program, and they could sign up to just engage with senior leaders, whether male or female, ask questions, talk about career, just
great.
get a glimpse of what it's like and figure out what their path might look like. And I received such great feedback on that program that I started. We're in our third year on that program now. And it's just I've seen connections made and people grow and people get promoted into different roles. So I'm really proud of that program. And like I said, we're going to continue it. And it's just one way that we have a women's network group here that, we can hook up with executive mentors and figure out how to grow their careers.
No, I love it. And first of all, congratulations.
And things.
It's not easy to step forward. I had Kim Davis on, I forget what episode this was, because I play hockey and I was like, I have to get a leader in hockey. This woman she's so badass. So she runs the multicultural development at the NHL, and she does something similar.
Oh,
And she told me the last group she brought in to mentor, because she invites boys and girls, men and women, was all women
wow.
in that field, which is I'm really excited about where the
That's amazing.
sport's going, you
Yeah.
know? So I think, and we didn't have this, right? Like when we started our careers, we didn't have any mentor. I used to have to sneak in to meet executives at IBM. You know what I mean?
No, I agree with you.
Like, I did.
The
I'm
way that
like Lou Gerster. I'm knocking on his door. I don't care, you
the way that I got
know?
female mentors is they actually came to me and wanted to talk to me
Awesome.
about and give advice and things like that. So yeah, I was very fortunate because to your point, there wasn't any kind of established forum where you could get that advice.
Yeah. No, that's a wonderful thing in the industry. All right, let's talk a little bit more about security. Now, I don't know if this definitely seems like it would relate to you, but
Okay.
okay. So you're in a male-dominated field. You're in a field that's, you know, in defense is about security. Are there any like issues in terms of either communication that you get involved with, or like how does that play out on your day to day in terms of communicating what's happening inside the company to, like you mentioned, you were a speaker at another event, right? So, um how do you protect the communication of what's happening inside the company? And I'm assuming, that you're dealing with selling to the government and maybe multiple governments.
Yeah.
So how do you protect that? I mean, the brand, and how does that work a little
Yeah,
bit?
no, it's interesting, because part of being a leader, right, is making sure that people understand the customer's needs and how they fit into that, into the overall picture. So
Yeah.
for us, it's a really delicate balance, right? Because
Yeah.
you have to have a need to know certain things, and
Yeah.
figuring out how to take what the customer wants, formulate a strategy, and then communicate that all the way down. That's obviously a big focus of mine on an annual basis, even quarterly, to make sure that I reinforce messages. But I'll say, the what can be talked about in open forums, what can't, that's pretty clear. But the challenge as a leader is figuring out how I can communicate that so everyone understands how they fit into the mission, and how what they're doing on a day-to-day basis contributes to that, and why it's so important. Right. So making that connection as a leader
Yeah.
is extremely important.
Yeah, like you said up front, I mean, keeping everyone on the same mission and
Yep.
keeping everyone driving forward, which is not easy.
No, it's not.
So how many do you manage a bunch of reports? How does that work
Yeah,
in your
so right now, the organization is about 5,000 people.
Mm,
So that includes like multiple functions. So overall, though, for what I manage is about 5,000 people.
okay.
Yep.
And your family.
Yeah.
I can't grasp those numbers, but you are a warrior woman. I mean,
I have leaders underneath
I
me
know you do,
that support that, right? Yeah.
but you're still managing the other leader. You're still, you have to set the tone for everyone.
Yep.
And
And I
what
take
would you,
that, I take it very personally, because
yeah,
again, our mission is so critical that, it's a lot of times it keeps you up at night, right? It's
I
really
mean, with your
important.
job, I would assume so. My
Yeah.
job does. That's not even that important. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, that's incredible. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, I think you mentioned a few things, but I just want to understand more. My audience is always looking for resources and information about D&I. So inside of Lockheed Martin, are there any like a D&I mission groups, women's
Yeah.
internal groups, and what does the company do in
Yeah.
developing female leaders?
So we have, I mentioned the business resource groups, right? So
Yeah.
that's comprised of, we have Women's Impact Network, which is specifically focused on, obviously female leaders, mentoring, and, female impact in the business. Black Excellence Council, we have a resource group for military veterans, Professional Asian American Network, we have a Pride group, Hispanic organization, for leadership and awareness. So those groups, anybody at Lockheed Martin can join. And typically we have an executive sponsor that sits on all of those
Uh,
research groups
right.
that supports them, they hold usually multiple events a year where people come together. I love it, right? Because the groups run the events and they're so fun, right? And it brings awareness just to the differences in the culture. I think in the one I attended last year for it was in the Hispanic group, they had a competition for like the best guacamole recipe or something
Oh
like
my, I have the best guacamole recipe. I wish I was there. No,
that.
that is so cool. So
Yeah, it's really
cultural.
fun. They do
Yeah.
a good job with, finding out creative ways to bring people together to learn about different cultures. So as an executive, I try and participate in at least 2 to 3 of those a year,
Mhm.
depending on what's going on my schedule. But all of our executives have a charter to make sure that we support these groups and encourage participation. I'll say this, over the past couple of months, I did an ice cream social at our site where all the resource groups set up their tables and people could go around and ask questions and get more information about how to become part of it. And
Mhm.
everybody likes free ice cream, right? So,
I mean, who doesn't? That's
so it's a really fun way to get people, involved in diverse activities.
mm. And just for those that are interested in careers, a little
Mhm.
bit, I know this is a little bit off question, but I
Yeah,
just,
no, that's okay. So,
yeah, like if they're starting out or, just interested in the industry. I mean, since you guys contacted me, I've been listening and learning more about Lockheed Martin. Tremendous company. I
mhm.
mean, just in general, the history is amazing. So for those that might be interested in getting involved, I mean, and also you have multiple segments. It's not just about,
Yes.
right. I didn't even
Yeah,
touch
I'm just in
open.
one segment.
Yeah, we were only focused on one thing right now.
Yeah, yeah.
But what's the best way for folks to start learning a little bit more?
So the best way is to go on the Lockheed Martin homepage. You can go on there and you can learn about the different business areas that we have. Obviously, we have our aeronautics organization, we have our space organization. I'm part of the Rotary and Mission Systems organization. So you can go on there and learn about our different organizations, figure out where the technology, what might excite you and where you fit in. And then on that website also is what requisitions we have open for job
Mm.
openings. So you can sort it by site, you can look at kind of the field that you want to get into, but that's the best way to learn about our business, the different areas and where you might, be attracted to apply and fit in.
And what do you do with universities? Do you do any talks in universities, and how does that work?
We do. We have partnerships with specific colleges and universities to obviously build a pipeline of talent. We have a internship program that we run every summer
Mhm.
with interns from those colleges and universities, and it's a great program because typically once you come in, if you do really well, you're asked to come back the next year before you even finish your internship for the
That's
summer.
great.
So that allows us, to have someone that maybe goes through 3 or 4 years of working side by side with people and then being able to transition right to a full-time job. Because, 9 times out of 10, we transition those folks to full-time jobs.
Right. I believe that's the best way to start.
Yeah, it
With any
definitely.
company.
Yeah, you learn on the job, right? College is
You
one
learn
thing,
on the
but
job, and you learn the culture,
yep.
which is so important.
Yeah,
Okay, so let's talk about the big thing that we always talk about on Warrior Women in Business
yeah,
is leaders supporting leaders, because there's a lot about women's, I mean, I was the president of NABO. There's a lot of women's organizations that we actually partner with that have their, and everybody has their own flavor and everybody is great, but they, a lot of them support just the female entrepreneurs and not so much the leaders supporting the leaders. So, wondering where you've seen this in your own career. I know you mentioned two mentors,
yeah,
um, but where you see this even in Lockheed Martin itself, the leaders supporting the other leaders, and like helping those that are coming up. How do you build the others as leaders? Can you
yeah.
talk about that a little bit?
So we go through probably every quarter, we look at talent in the organization, and we're very intentional when we talk about talent, again, female or male, and we figure out, okay, based on the career trajectory, what the person's experience is, how we marry that person up with the right mentor, to
Mm,
continue to help grow them, give them advice on what maybe, opportunities they should look for next to continue to grow in their career.
mhm.
So we are very intentional about that at Lockheed Martin to make sure that we focus on our talent and that we match people up so that they continue to grow in their career. And along with that matching up, I say it's one thing to have a mentor, but it's another thing to have a sponsor. And the difference
Yeah.
to me is that, as a sponsor, I'm in the room for someone advocating, saying, I've worked with this individual. They are phenomenal. You should pick them for that next job. And I think, especially females, you need a combination of both, right? You need some great mentors,
Oh
you need
God,
some
I've been saying this every
sponsors.
day. I'm
You need
serious.
sponsors in the room that know you and that can vouch for your performance. It's just so critically important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because a mentor can give you advice.
Right.
That's nice.
But they may not be the one at the table
They
that's
may
making
not be the
it.
one driving the action,
Yeah.
right? That's a great setup. I think a lot more companies should do that.
Yeah.
More companies should do that. So, okay. So when you heard the term warrior women in business,
Yeah.
what came to mind visually, or what you think?
Yeah, so when I thought about this, I was like, this is tough women who've worked really, really hard to get to where they are. You know,
Yes,
that's the case in most places. And they worked really hard to get a seat at the table and make a difference, no matter what field that you're working in. So that's what I think of when I think of, warrior women in business.
I love it. I ran an event last night, and a woman said to me, when you walked in the room, I could tell you're like no BS, badass
Yeah,
person. I said,
exactly.
no, I'm not. I'm a warrior woman. But we have to be sometimes to get
Yeah,
things done.
I
So,
agree.
and like you said up front, you said you're aggressive, but in a good way.
Yeah, yeah, I'm aggressive for the right reasons, right? I'm passionate about the business, and I'm passionate about making sure that we do the right things. So,
I love that.
yeah.
Okay, so two more questions. One is, how can my audience, because you've given a lot of information. I love your insights and tips and advice. They're so actionable.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
And so I'm just wondering, how can folks get in touch with you, learn more about
Yeah,
learn more about maybe some things you have coming up?
yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn. And if you just before you kind of reach out to me on LinkedIn, you can honestly just Google my name. It's funny, my son did that a couple years ago. He's 12
Oh,
now. And he snapped a picture of me and put it as his screensaver. for
Oh,
school. And I was like, where did you get that? He's like, I just
so
Googled.
cute.
So you can Google it. You can see like various interviews I've done and just kind of get a feel for both me personally and as well as professionally, what I've worked on and what we're doing.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Last piece is, are there any resources? I mean, we have the Lockheed Martin website,
Mhm.
Googling you and not taking a snapshot.
Yeah.
But any other resources you could think of for, girls or women that are interested in fields? I mean, Lockheed Martin is so vast, but whether in aerospace or in defense or military or maritime,
Yeah.
any other resources you can think of?
So the other resource I can think of is like any kind of STEM group. So depending on what your age group is, we are very active in STEM, obviously, right? So
Yes.
it's another area to get engaged, to learn more, and to support. There's a huge focus in supporting females in the engineering field because it's not typically a field that a female would go into. So I would encourage people to get engaged in STEM activities, and then I myself, I look at a lot of things, like TED Talks and things like that on leadership.
Yeah.
I think there's probably some stuff out there on defense, but I really am kind of drawn to the leadership TED Talks, and you just get little tidbits and different things to help you from a career perspective. There's both female and male perspectives that you can go out there and look at, but those would be the two things that I would say from a resource perspective.
All right, wonderful. Well,
Mhm.
it's 3:35.
Okay.
We are so exact. I love it.
All right.
Um, so yeah, I want to thank you so much for being on. You've given just so much great advice. So for everyone that's listening and watching, thank you for joining. This will be edited and shared multiple times over. So please listen to this. I mean, I go back and listen to former episodes that I've done, and I keep re-listening because I just can't believe the guests that I have. And all of their experience and knowledge to women that are coming up or women that are maybe even already, executives looking to jump into another industry. It's just so much great information that you wouldn't normally get.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that.
Nope.
Um,
Thank you.
you're welcome. So a couple things I want to mention coming up on Warrior Women. So one is Roxy Starr. I'll be going back out to Beverly Hills in January, which is always fun. And I'll have her on the podcast live. We're planning for Warrior Women in Business doing the Brand New Conference again in 2025 and other events. So if you are a woman that runs a women's media company or a women's event organization, do not hesitate to reach out. I mean, I'm always looking for other partners to work with. We do a lot to support D&I and executives and bridge leaders together. So if you have an idea, Warrior Women in Business is fairly new to my main company. So always open. You could reach us at info@warriorwomenbusiness.com, go on the website and see all the things that we're doing with different associations and organizations. So with all that being said, again, I want to thank Chandra so much for being on. This was very enjoyable conversation with a leader in defense. So I love it.
Do not expect it to be enjoyable.
Right. No, you're just so relaxed. I love it and enjoyable. So I appreciate it. Again, anybody wants to reach out in the show notes, once this is edited, we'll provide the links to all of the resources that Chandra mentioned as well. So for Jasmine Sandler, Warrior Women in Business, I am signing off for episode 68. And I don't want to dismiss happy holidays to everyone. Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's. Have an enjoyable and fruitful holiday season.
Thank you.
Thank you.